Good day everyone! Today we are entering the realm of bad anime for the very first time. Woohoo! To be specific, we will be looking at some of the worst rated series in recent years. Before we start, consider subscribing to the channel, it helps keep the channel going. So let's get started. Ex-Arm was a disaster by all accounts. It is the lowest rated series in my anime list, with a rating of 2.9 at the time of recording. It is not the lowest rated work in the site, but it is the lowest television series, and it's within the top 15 lowest rated overall. In addition, it has significantly more ratings in sheer numbers than other things that are rated that poorly, which are mostly old stuff or short series. In part that was caused by the fact this work was seen by many more people because of its terrible quality that was meme worthy. And what became a meme as well was the Crunchyroll Originals label that was placed in shows like this and others that became known for their poor quality. Story-wise, Ex-Arm follows Akira, a teenager that dies, but a few years later he awakens into the body of an android named Alma, who is the partner of a female police officer. Together, the two get involved with people that plan to use Ex-Arms, a weapon of mass destruction, for evil means. He ends up joining a division within the police that is tasked with preventing problems related to Ex-Arm, and that means they end up in conflict with groups that want to use it for their nefarious means. One thing to note is that Alma is a female android, whilst Akira was a boy, so it has a gender bender aspect, even though it's a robot, so it's technically non-sexual. The story in itself is not really exciting in any way. Perhaps knowing that the series adds heaps of fan service, and the fact the main character is a hot female android plays a large hand in this. However, the animation toned down the fun service of the series right down. Not like with that level of animation it would have done anything for anyone. It's not like poor CGI fights gets anyone going. Another problem for the anime is that the original series is darker. For instance, in the first chapter, there is an attempted rape, but the anime series downplays it with censoring or outright cutting out scenes. In a similar line, the gore and violence was toned down a lot as well in the animation. So the anime leaves out various aspects of the series that I believe were important for its appeal. But in the end, the biggest sin of this series was the terrible animation. The CGI in this show is horrifyingly poor, and whilst there were poor looking shows that did well, those are far in between. After all, animation is a visual medium, and if it's unappealing to look at, it kind of misses the point. Ex-Arm is horrible to look at, and the story does not draw you in a way that could make the viewer forget the terrible quality. So sadly, it's one of the worst series, and I place that firmly on the production, and how Crunchyroll, I assume, thought this was something they could attach their name to. It does kind of fit with Crunchyroll because Crunchyroll is quite poor quality as well. Forest Fairy 5 is quite a peculiar series. When I watched this, I had to check if it really was something released in this century. I was surprised to find out it was not only from this century, but only from a few years back. My astonishment at that fact came from, as you can see, the level of the animation of the series. It frankly looks like something straight out of a PlayStation 2 game. To be fair, I have seen incredibly poor CGI series with low budget like Kemono Friends, but this is a step below even those. Overcoming the terrible animation sometimes leads to something good. It's like finding treasure in the middle of the dumpster. It's not something that happens very often, at least that was the case in series like Kemuri Kusa. It is not just the graphics that reminds me of a game, but also the setting and narrative of the story. Why I feel this way is quite clear, since it feels like the story is written in a way to replicate a pet raising simulation game. But in this case, it's fairies, not a pet per se. Let me explain. This series focuses on the narrator that introduces us to each of the fairies in the first episode. But this introduction is simply him telling us about what they like and what they enjoy doing in the fairy world. And that makes it really seem like a game. The main aspect of the story, if you can call it that, is that there is a mirror in the fairy world that the narrator uses to show the human world to the fairies, and that drives conversations between the fairies and the narrator. So it's basically meant to be this cute simulation-like game in anime form, introducing elements of the human world to creatures that supposedly know nothing of it. Can be interesting, since they can theatrically use it as an outside view looking into human society. However, it tries to play a moe-like style with the conversations. But there's nothing cute about a model with low 2 digits polygons at best. In addition, the voice acting stands out in a negative way, because it feels so completely out of sync with the models that just adds to the whole cheapness of the series. I can understand the terrible rating for the series, but I can understand the basis of it. Overall, there was just not enough money for this project to look vaguely like something produced in this decade. Tri-Knights is a rugby anime series from 2019, and that meant it to some extent followed the period of the Rugby World Cup that was held in Japan in 2019. Rugby is a sport that is growing in popularity in Japan, and their national team performed significantly well, and TV ratings for the Rugby World Cup were record-shattering. I assume the timing of Tri-Knights was meant to align with that for it to have a boost, but it made no difference, because the series makes rugby unappealing as hell. Not that I find rugby that appealing to begin with. Sports series are a type of series that focus a lot on their characters, trying to make them appealing visually and emotionally. Part of this is because they often have rather straightforward stories that often involve the main character getting better at the sport the series is created around. The sport could be individual or team orientated, but the end result does not change much. Collective team sports tend to focus on overcoming differences between teammates and developing rivalries with opponents. Series focused on the individual sports are similar, but I think they can do more with their story. Tri-Knights does not do anything too different from the usual sports series. He has a clever main character with high technical knowledge of rugby, but he has given up on actually playing it himself, until a dude that is lacking in tactfulness drags him back into the sport, and then things go on from there. The main difference for Tri-Knights was the fact they focused on rugby, and it could be compared to All Out that was released a few years prior to it. So if story-wise Tri-Knights was simple and played a lot of the tropes of sports series, that alone does not mean a series will be bad. Just look at My Hero Academia or any other series similar to that. One aspect that is important for sports series is the quality of the animation, since sports series are in terms of narrative quite bland, and this one is incredibly bland, it's terrible. It is usually the animation and the characters, as I previously stated, that carry them forward. The most popular and successful sports series all stand out with decent animation and characters that people liked, either because of their visual appeal or because of some sort of character trait that was enjoyed by audiences. Tri-Knights does not really have any interesting characters, since its script is not great and characters feel like they are cut out from tropes. And of course the animation in this series is really poor, to put it nicely, which is probably not a surprise if you look at the staff and the studio. Tri-Knights is a sports series that feels like it was pumped out by an anime industry that sinks more and more to just pump out titles with subpar productions that feel destined to fail. Well, we now owe 4th. This is also the last one, and it's of course because it does take a big burden to watch so many bad series. I need to watch some good ones to wash it out. My System, My Writer is a light novel adaptation anime that has an overall rating in the anime list in the 4s. It features an older brother that debuts as a light novel author, but in actuality he is posing as the author in place of his popular sister, who is also the student council president at her school, who is the real writer. Of course, the contents of the novel she's writing are a bit controversial, as it features a sister that deeply loves her brother and dotes on him, as they have a tsundere dynamic that she uses to mask her real attraction to her brother, like in the novel. Little sisters or imoto is a common archetype in otaku culture. It draws from the cute moe culture that developed around manga and anime in the late 90s and early 2000s for the most part. It's not a surprise that these sort of stories come from light novels that are heavily marketed at those hardcore otaku fans. Oreimo was not the first series to tap into a little sister and big brother romance kind of story, but it was a significantly popular one. This series tries to follow in the footsteps of that series, but in popularity it definitely did not manage to reach Oreimo in any way. So why was this series so badly disliked? First of all, there is a general aversion by mainstream audiences in the West towards these works, appended to a specific niche of otaku in Japan and in the West as well. However, I'm not saying that this is a good story. It's quite a bad series that tries to emulate Oreimo and Eromanga Sensei, and it plays quite similarly to those works, with a worse script. Another and most likely reason for its low ratings in MyAnimeList and other sites is its low animation quality. Like in most anime, the animation quality is a big part of the reason it's popular. However, this bad animation was a result of the absolutely chaotic production of the series, and to some extent it shows the state of the Japanese anime industry that has become about quantity over quality, and you can see that from the low quality animation products coming in every season, which is kind of sad to see. So what did we learn after looking over all these poor series? First, poor production and the increased lack of new talent in Japanese animation has led to more shows like these that are an absolute mess. It's a problem that I hope to talk about in a future video for the future. And one more thing before leaving, drop in the comments the worst series you have watched and the year it is from. And don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to our channel. See you guys later.